Hello, and welcome to our exhibit Life as Data. My name is Juan, and I'm one of the 4 Philomathia researchers at the University of Cambridge. Together, we are studying how data, innovations, and technologies are shaping how we understand our lives, ourselves, and others. Now, we have all heard that technology can improve our lives. It can help us work better, organize our economy, process information, fall in love, stay in touch with our friends and loved ones, look after our health, and much more. These things may well be true, and we can of course debate how we make better use of technology so it works for us. But the point that I would like to make today is that it's not simply whether we are more efficient, better informed, healthier, or more connected, but that certain technologies are changing what things like health, information, love, or work actually mean. So, for example, we increasingly understand our bodies not by living in them, but by seeing them through machines, screens, and gadgets that interpret our bodies for us. We increasingly connect and build relations with people that certain softwares have chosen for us. How much debt we go into and what for is increasingly determined by algorithms tracking us to decide how much we can repay, when, and so on. As a result, these technologies are redefining some of the core aspects of what being a person means, from who we fall in love with to where we may be able to live or what kinds of jobs we may be able to have. In what follows, you'll see two interpretations of my work, produced in collaboration with the amazing artists from the Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology. In the first one, artist Noctran produced a poster illustrating how these technologies are deciding for us, who we love, where we live, where we work, and so on. The second interpretation is an animation by artists Szymon Beirut and Dmitry Pisarczyk, who show how these technologies work to erase their own traces and ensure we don't spot them. The main point the artists and I would like you to get from our collaboration is that the question may well be less about whether technologies are good or bad, and more about how technologies are changing what counts as good or bad. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Ngọc. I'm a new media art student from Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology. I'm the one working with the poster and comic for the research of Dr. Juan de Nido on algorithm and how was this technology affect on people's life. And now, let me guiding you through the process of how was it done. So when I first worked on the project, what interested me most is how to portray the dangers that algorithms pose to our society, which Dr. Juan mentioned. However, I don't want to thrust the audience with some eggy or threatening image, but a sarcastic and humorous idea. The first idea that came up at the time were a cat, a confused cat with too many options offered by the suggestion. The second idea is to portray the algorithm as a priest preaching dogmas, with the idea that we humans now easily believe the algorithm suggestion in the same way that followers believe in dogma. The third idea, which came to me quite by an accident, was to adapt the propaganda picture of Chairman Mao as a way of simulating that following an algorithm is essentially the same as believing in propaganda. However, the final idea is chosen was came from a famous line, "Mother knows best" from Disney Tangled, which describes a manipulative relationship in the name of love and care. In this, I decided to turn the concept of algorithm into a robot character, which is our personality, a big eye for observation, purposeful of data, and robotic tentacles like human arms to manipulating people on this out game. With this in mind, I continue to draw the two characters that appear in the poster, Algorithm and the guy with the glasses, into a short comic with 4 frames. This comic drawing idea is the parody of a very popular children's comic around the world, which is the manga series about the Robocat Doraemon that had to go to help with everything of humans need. During this process, I received a lot of guidance and suggestions from my professors and actors to further refine my idea. The feedback from Dr. Huang also helped me a lot in shaping the final product. And that's it. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show.
Hello, my name is Dmitry.
And my name is Shimon.
We are new media arts students in Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology, and we were creating, designing, and animation for research conducted by Juan Del Nido. The research is about algorithms and its effects on our day-to-day life. We would like to guide you through the process of how this animation came to be, from the first sketches, posters, and then later to the animation and the final project.
Hi there everyone, it's Shimon here, and I gotta admit that I'm pretty glad to how the project turned out, and thank you Dr. Del Nido for agreeing to work with us, basically. I'm sure you all can't wait to listen to his research, so I won't keep you for too long, so let's maybe just go to the highlights, okay? So as you can see, our project went through quite a bit of redesigns between the prototype and the final stage, and it was the monster that we had to change the most, and so much so that we basically have a new monster manual at the end. But it was actually the light switch that gave us the most trouble, though I really don't mind. I'm really happy how everything turned out, like I said, and thank you Dimitri for basically wanting to work with me. So enjoy the show everyone, bye!
Hi, I am Ignacio Arteaga, a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Social Anthropology at the University of Cambridge. Many of us know someone who have had cancer, and this trend is sadly only increasing. Although treatments in hospitals are improving, there are still cases in which people affected by cancer die. And one way in which health professionals and scientists are trying to change this is by focusing on early detection technologies. Some of those technologies you might know. Have you ever heard about cancer screening programs, for example? Maybe someone in your family has been invited. Screening programs are one example of those technologies, but there are also other examples of experiments using blood tests or saliva to try to pick up cancer markers before symptoms appear. The medical community argues that if we detect cancer early, we can live healthier and longer lives. And this is the promise of early detection. But how can we get there? In my research, I argue the three major things have to happen to realize the promise of early detection. The first one is that we need accurate and reliable technologies to detect cancer early, and this must be accessible by relevant health professionals. The second one is that we need people from the public to be willing to use those technologies. They need to trust the technologies and come forward, even before symptoms appear. And the third one is that if cancer is detected, then we need to be quick in confirming the diagnosis and start treatment if necessary, to avoid any delays. So how all this have anything to do with data? Well, one of the big challenges of early detection, as some of you might know, is that we are not able to detect all types of cancer yet. Screening programs, for example, can only be counted with the fingers of one hand. So many professionals are now trying to create big research projects to find out how we can develop technologies to detect other cancers early. To do this, they require that all different groups of people participate, donating samples such as saliva, blood, or pee, or answering questionnaires and sharing medical information. And guess what? Not everyone participates. Some groups are often left out, and the data we have then is incomplete. And this is actually a problem, because lack of diversity affects the results of any scientific project. So if we want early detection technologies to benefit everyone, we need to do something about this and think again, what scientists and health professionals could do differently? This is the focus of an ongoing collaboration with 3 other universities. Anna Boroka from the Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology made a fantastic animation about this project. I leave you with Anna, who will introduce herself and animation.
Hello, my name is Anna, and I worked on the visualization for Ignatia's roadmap to early cancer detection. I have chosen this project because I'm personally interested in health research, and I think it is essential to visualize research in a more understandable way, and in this case through storytelling. I started my work by looking into the main points of Ignatia's research, which were the lack of including diverse communities in the way of processing data, and the communities don't benefit from the data they provide to the researchers. My project aims to exhibit the impact missing communities have on the system and illustrate the importance of giving back data to the communities. Visually, I wanted to depict this as a before and after image. Out of several ideas, I liked the existing idea of the roadmap. Therefore, I looked more into linear kinetic systems, especially chain reactions. In the final version, the tilted slides amplify the existing roads that researchers are currently taking, pushed by various reasons. In the end, by actively turning the pivot and choosing to connect and give back data to the communities, the whole system prospers and benefits from it. I hope you enjoy the final outcome, and I'd be happy if you want to connect with me. Until then, bye!
Clinical research aims to improve health outcomes so that everyone can live longer and healthier lives. Scientists observe patterns in the data to answer medical questions. The contribution from the public is essential. Without the data they provide, there is no possible answer and no medical innovation can happen. What does that data look like, you might ask? Members of the public are invited to participate in several ways: donating blood samples, giving access to medical records, or answering various kinds of questions about their lives. To make medical interventions work for everyone, data needs to be diverse. It needs to represent everyone. But some groups are often left out: people who struggle to access healthcare and those who have different ancestries, bodies, or capacities. The exclusion is a problem. The same groups, those seldom heard in clinical research, often suffer the most from the issues scientists are trying to solve. Scientists understand this is a problem of representation in research. It is crucial. New medical interventions should benefit all of us. To overcome these exclusions, we need to build bridges, and this takes time and effort. Our research shows that many scientists feel that they do not have the skills or the time to figure out how to create those bridges. This is partly because of training curriculum, career incentives, and funding timelines demanding results in short timeframes. We need a roadmap to make it easier for scientists and communities to connect. Our community engagement roadmap seeks to increase diversity and democratize the benefits of early cancer detection research. This research to find cancer earlier when treatment is more effective. Early cancer detection happens in laboratories, clinics, and the community. All of us can be part of it. We know that engaging with any social group is no guarantee of having them participate. Bridges need to be context-specific, and still some people might refuse to participate. We know of several reasons for this. We might be asking the wrong questions. Our research might not look trustworthy to others. People might have more pressing priorities to attend. The bottom line is that we must acknowledge that research is a two-way relationship. Researchers sometimes fail to produce research that genuinely benefits all groups, so it is only natural that some groups might not see the point of contributing to it. But maybe there are things we can do to become more trustworthy, ask better questions, and address people's needs and priorities. We need to listen more and think out of the box. We believe that leveling up power asymmetries in clinical research may allow scientists to answer pressing scientific questions better. At the same time, those answers may also contribute to the life and health of all the social groups we strive to serve.
Hi, I'm Dr. Katarzyna Sislik. I'm one of the Philomatia Fellows at the University of Cambridge and also a lecturer in human geography at Durham University. In my research, I'm looking at how technology is changing the world of work. I would like to tell you about my recent project in Lagos and Abuja, which are two big cities in Nigeria, a beautiful country in the western coast of Africa. Nigeria is the biggest economy in Africa, and both Lagos and Abuja are fast developing dynamic urban centers. Between 2014 and 2020, Nigeria's working age population grew from 102 million to 122 million, creating the so-called youth bulge, a situation where the largest proportion of people is comprised of children and young adults. The problem that Nigeria is facing now is finding work opportunities for all these young people. 33%, or 23 million people in Nigeria, are currently unemployed. In 2014, Uber and Bolt started their e-hailing operations in Nigeria and were soon followed by a number of local e-hailing platforms. Thousands of people became Uber and Bolt drivers. These are often highly educated individuals who simply could not find any other work. So e-hailing has provided a much needed income source for many. Platforms facilitate outreach and matching, translating into increased wages. This happens at the expense of longer working hours in the absence of labor standards. The oversupply of labor drives down the service fees, progressively lowering the drivers' real wages. In this project, I worked with the trade unions of the e-hailing drivers in Nigeria to find out what the drivers themselves think about the work conditions offered by the platforms. We find that the drivers are in what we call precarious employment. Since they're not considered employees, they're not protected by labor laws. A lot of the drivers are able to make a decent living, but only by working for over 12 hours per day for many different platforms. Their work environment is not safe. They are often summoned to the shady areas of the city where they can be attacked or robbed. Some of the platforms do not even verify the identity of the clients or riders, so the drivers are left vulnerable to different forms of abuse. They cannot refuse rides because the platform's algorithms lower their ratings. The drivers are trying to self-organize. They form WhatsApp and Facebook groups and informal associations, as well as trade unions. These, however, are not recognized by the platforms who do not consider drivers to be their employees. So what can be done to make the situation better? Implementing industry standards is very important. For example, Oxford-based Fair Work Foundation encourages platforms to adopt 5 principles of decent work: fair play, fair contracts, fair conditions, fair management, and fair representation. In the long run, however, only national level regulation can conclusively solve the issue. I would like you now to have a look at the visualizations created by the artists from the Polish-Japanese School of Technology and Design that really nicely visualize the problem that my research is trying to describe, analyze, and solve.
Our design process for this poster started as taking a deep dive into the research we were provided with, as well as various news clips and photos showing the dangers of the e-hailing industry that the drivers face as they go about their jobs. These dangers included being not paid for their work, included being threatened, in some cases even being attacked. After seeing this, we knew that we wanted to direct the focus of the posters onto these victims of the e-hailing industry.
As we started working on our sketches, we ran into certain troubles. We wanted to make it clear that the victims are specifically e-hailing drivers, not taxi drivers or other drivers. So we needed to think of a certain way to identify them. We also wanted the poster to retain some sort of subtlety to keep the graphic more interesting.
Eventually we came up with a few ideas, all of which focus on either the cars or the drivers. In our sketches, we experimented a lot with mixing the illustration with the typography. As we continued developing the sketches, they were all very different, but all showed the dangers of the e-hailing industry. We had a sketch that showed the driver carrying a car on his back. We had a sketch that showed a tire being pierced with nails that had typographic elements on it, a car barely driving on a cliff that was made of these typographic elements, a stack of damaged e-hailing cars. And finally, our last idea, which was a set of posters of these e-hailing drivers that had their names and the forms of abuse that they went through written underneath.
With help from our professor, Anna Eichler, we polished this idea and continue working on it. So we again ran into some issues, main one being the identification of the e-hailing drivers. First, we wanted to place the driver into the car behind the steering wheel. Then we wanted to add some name tag identification, but finally we decided to use the layout of the e-hailing app.
With the layout decided, we knew that we wanted to add an AR layer onto the poster. This AR layer features a scrolling animation that allows us to add more drivers and more forms of abuse that they went through without making the actual poster cluttered. It also allows us to make the poster appear more interactive.
With all this planned out, we were able to continue working and developing our sketches to the finished product.
Hi, it's me again. Did you know that every time you use a mobile phone, your device collects hundreds of thousands of data points, creating an algorithmic representation of you? These data is then made available, often for money, to companies or governments who use them to know more about you, better target their operations, which may both benefit and harm you in the long term. The collection, processing, storage, and circulation of data, known as datafication, are central elements of contemporary societies, including sub-Saharan Africa. There are mobile applications that offer advice, for example, to farmers in Ghana and Nigeria, telling them what crops to cultivate or what fertilizers to use. Other apps offer microcredit opportunities to the urban poor, allowing them to start microbusinesses. At the same time, all of these apps suck out large amounts of data about the users, often without their consent. In this research, Professor Daniel Margocci and I look at datafication in a historical perspective. We investigate the case studies from the early modern period to show that datafication is not a novel process at all, nor is it limited to contemporary mobile phone-enabled data collection. We show that throughout history, datafication happened again and again because of political and economic pressures, and it relied on a variety of paper, electronic, and digital technologies. For example, in 18th century India, the British government established indirect rule that relied on the co-option of local actors and institutions, and huge data sets were often constructed with the help of local populations. British cartography was in fact born in India, where European cartographers, such as James Rennell, worked with Indian experts to survey the subcontinent, which was mapped in more detail than the British Isles. So the data originally collected for effective local rule were then decades later appropriated by the British Empire for effective colonial rule. Similarly, the Spanish Empire's colonial project in Latin America entailed the gathering of navigational charts, cartographic data, and botanical illustrations with the help of the local populations. The Spanish colonial authorities then appropriated these local knowledges, for example, about medicinal qualities of plants, and established large-scale plantations concentrated in the hands of the few, often Spanish merchants. It resulted in the dispossession and impoverishment of much of the local populations. There is a lot we can learn from these historical cases of datafication to design better policies for present-day datafication. Most importantly, we must realize that data has a long shelf life. It might be collected for one purpose, potentially beneficial to us, and later in time be sold or appropriated by those who want to harm us. This is particularly troubling in the context such as sub-Saharan Africa, where data policies are either non-existent or not properly enforced, enabling what we call data colonialism. Think about these issues the next time you see a clip about a revolutionary app meant to improve the lives of farmers or save the urban poor from poverty. Think about the data. Think about your data. Have a look at the visualization.
When we first started working on a project, we had no idea what datafication was. So first thing we had to do was to understand the research we were meant to illustrate. That meant looking through the research papers and doing some research on our own. Even with that, it was very hard to show something as general and as abstract as datafication. All of it led us to think about datafication as some sort of control, which melted into the datafication as a sort of manipulation or some sort of indirect control, which finally led us to think about exploitation of the workers.
Even with datafication narrowed down into this rather specific topic, it still remained a very vast one. It is ever present in our daily lives due to the oversaturation of technology. We considered adding this more general outlook into the poster design and make it more relatable for everyone. However, we decided to keep the spotlight on the South African farmers, as that is what the research does. With support from our professors Anna Eichler and Tomasz Valenta, we came up with many different ideas and sketches over the course of the few weeks. Our ideas range from portraying the farmers as the fruit being squeezed to the product being picked, to showing the farmers as chess pieces being manipulated on the board. Eventually, we came up with the idea of using data centers, which store servers on server racks. We would replace these servers with farms to have a sort of play on words with the term data farming. This allowed us to add more meaning to our poster and have it relate to the idea in a more subtle manner. With this settled, we still had a bit of an issue with the perspective. We wanted to make sure the poster was clear and readable without being too complex. Our solution was using a very simple front view perspective that allowed us to put 5 of our imagined server farms into focus.
When working on the poster concept, we wanted to focus on one element to keep it simple and coherent. This element was exploitation of the workers, but this didn't fully illustrate the research. So we wanted to include the element of the historical element of the datification, and the data farming concept offered the perfect place for it. So we dedicated each one of the server racks to the different time periods.
Originally, we wanted to create a very traditional poster with an illustration and some typography. However, very quickly we ran into the idea of condensing the topic into a short enough tagline that made sure that the research was clear and digestible to everyone. As we continued working on the illustration and continued developing it, any slogans we came up with did not seem to work. Eventually, we decided to forgo this idea of a slogan entirely and instead add an AR layer. This AR layer would allow us to not only reiterate technology as a modern datification tool, but it also allowed us to explain the research in very digestible terms for all of the audience to understand.
With all that decided, we were able to move on and continue working on a project. So within 2 weeks, we had our poster ready, and this poster now functions as the visualization of the research.
Hello, my name is Ivan. I'm from Minsk, Belarus, and I study in Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology, and I made an animation for the research on the topic of e-hailing in Africa. The research was conducted by Katarzyna Czeslik, Roland Bania, and Bhaskar Vira. Sorry if I didn't say the names correctly. Well, my animation represents the 24 hours cycle or even loop of the African e-hailer. I wanted to say that African e-hailers, they have difficult lives and that they have to work a lot. That's basically it. Now I will describe the process. First of all, I came up with the plot for the animation. Then I drew characters. Well, basically it's only phone and a driver. Then I started animating, and it was the most difficult and interesting part at the same time. I used rotoscoping technique. It's actually when you at first you film a video of in real life of a man doing something, and then you just draw over it. It makes animation process much easier. So I want to say thanks to my friend Danik, who was my actually model. And also I want to say huge thank you to our professor Anna Eichler, who guided me a lot through the work process. It was a very interesting experience, and thank you for such an opportunity.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Dibangana Bose. I am a postdoctoral research associate at the Department of Geography at the University of Cambridge. I'm currently working with Professor Bhaskar Veer on a project which is funded by the Philomathia Social Sciences Program on the future of work in the digital age. My research examines how the use of digital platforms and apps in delivering on-demand services, such as if you think of cases like Uber and Deliveroo, how these kind of platforms and use of apps in delivering such services has transformed the world of work. Such forms of on-demand services, service delivery is also popularly known as gig work. And gig work basically refers to something that kind of denotes a very temporary nature of work, which has no fixed beginning or end time. And it's also on demand. And more recently, gig work has been understood as something that uses some form of digital technology, like some form of apps. So basically, gig workers are people who have no formal contracts. So for example, if you imagine the case of Deliveroo workers who deliver food at your home, at your doorstep, have no formal contracts with the restaurants or with these apps or these platforms like Deliveroo. They are just working as partners or as partner agents rather than as workers. Therefore, they lack any kind of formal contract with these companies. They also lack any form of social security benefits like pensions, etc. And of course, it assumes a flexible work arrangement where the delivery person can work on their discretion, depending on when they want to work. When, for example, an Uber driver can decide when to go out driving, a Deliveroo worker can decide when to work. Therefore, it allows a lot of flexible work arrangement. A lot of students you would find in Cambridge who are working as Deliveroo workers. And the same is the case with freelance writers who are also part of the gig or platform work. However, research across the globe shows how these flexible work arrangements have made the lives of gig workers extremely uncertain, anxious, precarious, and these kind of work arrangements are also taking a toll on the well-being of their everyday life. And the following artwork that is produced in collaboration with student artists based at the Polish-Japanese Academy of Information Technology is a visual representation of this contrasting work-life balance of traditionally employed, more salaried form of workers and the gig workers who lack any form of salaried employment. And it kind of shows how their work, because of this kind of on-demand nature of work that they have to deliver, how their lives are becoming extremely uncertain and always on the edge. I hope that this artwork will give you some glimpse of the everyday lives of these gig workers. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daria Samarska.
Hello, I'm Anastasia Gaida.
We have been working on animation based on Dr. Devangana preliminary research about the temporalities of the everyday life of gig worker.
Through this animation, we wanted to show how gig workers' lives differs from officially employed workers.
What disadvantages the gig worker faces, and that flexibility and autonomy of such worker is actually a myth. We started from preparing sketches and creating an animatic to convey and visualize our idea. And then, based on these sketches and animatic, we created 3D animation. Hope you will like it. Thank you.
I'm Kat Bluemke, and I'm the creator of Gigco Escape the Gig Economy. Gigco is a mobile game for iOS and Android, and was released in 2019 by Specwork Studio. The game was created as a result of my graduate research, in which I was looking at the ways video games are impacting how we work. I was specifically interested in gamification, a relatively new concept at the time, which was the idea that companies could use strategies developed by video game designers to incentivize or increase productivity of their workers. Video games, to keep people playing and paying, frequently use behavioral manipulation strategies. Achievement systems and mystery loot boxes are some of the most obvious instances of this, but it can also be built into the game itself. I'm particularly guilty of thinking to myself, oh, just one more run, and later realizing hours have passed. When companies integrate gamification strategies into their workforce, they're not thinking about how they can make work more enjoyable. They're trying to get more out of their workers. In the gig economy, gamification is exceedingly common. Uber drivers who rely on the company's app for access to work are encouraged to accept mystery loot box style ride requests without knowing the end location of the ride. Rating systems are used throughout gig economy apps and discourage workers from speaking out against harassment or exploitation in fear of a bad review, which would in turn jeopardize their livelihood. Gig workers can also find themselves gamified beyond the app, with Amazon warehouses being a type of perverse arcade. You've probably heard the horror stories. Workers so carefully monitored they can't take breaks to eat or use the washroom. Workers dying in the warehouse and employees told to continue working around the deceased's body. Warehouse robots puncturing mace cans and injuring human employees. The Amazon warehouse is a totally gamified workplace where the workers are expendable players. In Gigco, you're an alienated worker in a shipping warehouse, where the first challenge is just to keep pace with your robot coworkers and make it through the day. It's dark, but there's some hope too. If you make it through your first day, you begin to uncover an effort to organize your workplace and demand better working conditions for workers. The game was released in January 2019, with its research and creation happening between 2016 and 2018. For people playing the game in 2020, I think it takes on a more urgent tone. Amazon has done great business thanks to the pandemic, but despite huge profits, there's been very little permanent change for their workers, who remain precarious. I hope that in 2020, the audience of Gigco takes home that there are still huge achievements to unlock for workers' rights, and that these victories would make us all winners.